It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222, your emails at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. I have a lot of sound that I want to play for you about what Gavin Newsom had to say about the response to the fires, and we're going to get to that. I wanted to get to that yesterday. That was the whole plan for the show. But then Karen Bass decided to throw a press conference and derail everything. Well, Karen Bass just threw another press conference, but I'm not letting her derail it because there's only one thing that she said that's worth playing, and I'm going to play it for you right here. And then we're going to move on because the only story in LA isn't the ICE raids. There are thousands of people in LA County that are still without homes, that are still trying to deal with their insurance companies and everything else. And that story needs attention too, Karen Bass. But I found this rather interesting as I dipped into today's press conference where Karen Bass and the city attorney and a few mayors from some of the other cities in Los Angeles County are now suing the federal government over immigration enforcement. Good luck with that. But Karen Bass was asked by, I don't know who this reporter is, but he was asked by Karen Bass to respond to the increase in violent attacks that we've seen on federal law enforcement, like that guy armed to the T who was trying to get into a shootout with federal law enforcement in Texas. And Karen Bass's response to that is, it's emblematic of how she has decided to portray everything now. This happened just minutes ago. You heard it here first.
Mayor Bass, this is kind of more of a broader national question. Reports indicate that ICE agents and police officers in Texas have been targeted in ambushes, including in Alvarado, where assailants in tactical gear allegedly lured officers with fireworks before opening fire. Given your strong opposition to federal immigration enforcement actions in Los Angeles, how would you address similar escalations of violence against law enforcement in Texas? And what steps?
So what would you do to try to lower the temperature in the room and try to, discourage violence against federal law enforcement? By the way, as this was happening, it was reported that in Van Nuys, 4 people got arrested for felony charges for trying to put spike strips in front of ICE vans.
Would you propose to prevent such unrest from spreading to Los Angeles while balancing community safety in your sanctuary city policies?
Well, let me just say that the quote-unquote riots that were reported never happened.
What? That's a new one.
Well, let me just say that the quote-unquote riots that were reported never happened.
This is the new strategy. It doesn't matter anymore. Just completely tell your version of the truth for everything. MacArthur Park, that's where kids go to play. Riots? There were no riots. Crime is down in Los Angeles.
Well, let me just say that the quote-unquote riots that were reported never happened.
There was no rioting in Los Angeles last month. What are you talking about?
We did have a couple of incidences of vandalism and looting. But the way it was portrayed nationally was like the whole city was up in flames. The comparison to 1992, which was
portrayed, people saw videos of people throwing rocks and bottles at federal law enforcement. We saw people breaking off pieces of sidewalk to throw at federal law enforcement and LAPD. We saw people setting Teslas on fire. Excuse me, Waymos on fire. Excuse me. Got to make sure I make that distinction. But no, there was no rioting.
The quote-unquote riots that were reported never happened.
She's also incredibly dismissive about what did happen in Texas. She don't care.
Completely and 100% inappropriate. And I think the example that you use, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it. It was from some other state. But yeah, right. So I have no idea what happened in Texas. What I do know is what happened in Los Angeles. And what has been happening in Los Angeles has been completely unacceptable. Okay.
how you're going to contain the situation.
Well, I think I answered the question, but I can't respond to Texas.
She doesn't care if people attack federal law enforcement. And, of course, there were no riots.
The quote-unquote riots that were reported never happened.
Let's move on. In Altadena, several residents who were victims of the Eaton fire tried to gather outside of Gavin Newsom's big press conference that Karen Bass was supposed to attend, but she abandoned it to, go play in that sandbox. Residents are dealing with a nightmare. The ones that their homes completely burned down, that's one situation. And there have been a lot of problems with insurance. But what's been even more frustrating is all the residents, their home did not burn down, but there is so much smoke damage that the home is uninhabitable. And the insurance companies, notably State Farm, the one that Ricardo Lara just gave an emergency rate hike to.
Absolutely.
They are refusing to pay out on those claims, or they're nickel and diming, or they're dragging along the process. Like a good neighbor, huh? For more, here is NBC4.
The images of that day 6 months ago are difficult to wipe clean. The devastation of the Eaton fire as it swept through the community of Altadena.
Thousands of homes, businesses, and churches leveled. Nothing but ash remaining there. 18 people lost their lives. And while the community pushes forward to rebuild, some of the toughest times remain ahead.
NBC4's Karma Dickinson live in Altadena with some of the challenges survivors here are now facing. Karma.
Yes, hundreds were actually gathering here today in Altadena, many of them stopping at the map just over my shoulder. What's notable about that map, every dot in red represents a home that was destroyed by the Eaton fire. So that gives you a sense of just how widespread that impact was, that footprint right here in this community. So hundreds were out for this event. We're showing you some video of it now. And really, they tell us that you might be surprised to hear that they say that their biggest barrier to coming home has been their battles with insurance companies. So
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Ricardo Lara, are you surprised at all?
I'm very kind of sketchy.
The insurance companies who love to cry about how they can't afford to do business here and California's regulations are so unbelievable and all this other nonsense, they aren't even fulfilling contracts. They are trying to get out of paying you, which I guess is the point of an insurance company, to make sure they don't pay you or they pay you as little as possible. What's funny is we're supposed to be this state that overregulates the insurance market, but when it comes to unfair business practices like this and not fulfilling contracts, the insurance commissioner is out to lunch.
today's event was as much about marking 6 months as it was about demanding accountability from those providers. The event organizers displayed posters they say reflect the mishandling of their insurance claims. And while thousands lost all or part of their homes to the fire, even some people whose homes didn't burn have still been displaced for the last 6 months. Here's one woman's story.
Imagine that. Your home is still standing. It's been sitting there unoccupied for 6 months because the insurance company won't pay for a cleaning.
This is what it's come to for Wendy Davis.
Hi, Karma. I'm Wendy.
She is so fed up after the last 6 months that she was waiting for our NBC4 crew outside of her home with a waiver.
So first thing, a little housekeeping.
She wanted to make abundantly clear she was waiving her privacy rights.
I waived my rights, and they could talk to you about my specific claim.
Oh, I like this. Okay, so she is signing a waiver. So when NBC goes to State Farm and says, hey, what the hell is with this claim? They say, well, we don't want to violate anyone's privacy. We can't talk about specific claims. Now you can.
Removing any barrier for us to get answers from State Farm Insurance.
And so it sounds like you want to make very clear that the insurance company
Can answer your questions about my claim.
Why is that?
Because I think they hide behind privacy and they don't give any details.
She would know. Wendy is a retired attorney who specializes in contracts, trained to haggle over fine print.
Oh, boy. This is the wrong person the insurance companies want to mess with.
But she says the back and forth with State Farm Insurance since January 7th has worn her down.
It's like a daily trauma.
A first glance at Wendy's home, and it's hard to see what's gone so wrong. Because, well, she still has her entire home.
So what's the problem?
The smoke damage.
But 6 months after the Eaton fire came within blocks of her. Wendy says it's still not safe to live in parts of her house.
That bedroom down there had asbestos in the soot and ash.
Several rooms of the homes continue to test positive for asbestos. Wendy showed us the rooms that have been cleared so far.
I don't understand why this is such a difficult thing. The tests show that the home is uninhabitable. You're supposed to have a policy that covers something like this, but the insurance companies don't want to pay out.
She said from the outset she had a fight on her hands from State Farm, who initially tried to deny her claim, despite the asbestos testing results she showed us.
So anything over 10 seems to be very concerning to me, and we're at 16.
What's followed, she says, has been months of stalling and stonewalling.
I had to beg to get somebody to even answer the phone for the first month.
Well, they can't afford to have people answering the phone for fire victims. They had to pay to sponsor the NBA draft.
I had 5 adjusters in a month.
It's left Wendy and her husband with maxed out credit cards and still without a stable roof over their heads, going from friends and family's homes to short-term rentals and hotels.
We've moved, I lose track, but I think it's 14, 15 times.
When we asked about Wendy's claim, State Farm sent a statement saying, in part, we have been actively working with our customer to provide them with claim payments in alignment with...
No, you haven't. This is why I don't even understand why we have an insurance commissioner, because he's not doing a damn thing about this. Sure, he said he launched an investigation into it, but that doesn't mean anything. We're still investigating who melted the 10 freeway.
We have been actively working with our customer to provide them with claim payments in alignment with all the benefits they're entitled to under their policy.
I just want to live here, even if we have rudimentary stuff. I just want to be home.
She said she was finally able to track down a State Farm executive, which she believes led to her claim being handled with more urgency. But the asbestos cleanup itself is proving stubborn. Wendy hopes the most recent round of abatement will be enough to get her back into her home.
It will probably be 3 weeks, probably at the minimum, because once they clean, we'll test again, and the tests take about 10 days.
In the meantime, she says she's still negotiating with State Farm to cover her hotel stays. What she wants from...
She has to pay for that out of pocket? This is like the homeowner in the Palisades that is rebuilding, and they have to stop the rebuild because they're going into their own pocket to pay for it because State Farm won't pay out their claim. And that's a house that burned down.
What she wants from the company, she says, is simple.
Just take care of us like you say you will when we buy your policy.
Seems like a fairly simple service, right? You pay them a monthly premium in the unlikely event that you have to use it. And then when you use it, they make you whole. If that's not what this is, it sure seems like a Ponzi scheme to me.
And State Farm's statement about Wendy's claim went on to say, we're committed to consistently providing every customer all the benefits they have available through their policy. We're happy to...
If that was true, you wouldn't have thousands of people making these stories every single day that are victims of the most devastating event we've ever seen in Southern California.
We're happy to address any questions or concerns with our policyholder directly. And so Wendy says she continues to try to get those answers, but it has been difficult. And she says she often gets a runaround, and so she's hoping she's coming to the end of it. In terms of what the massive group of people out here are calling for, they are calling for some accountability from lawmakers. They're looking for lawmakers to hold State Farm and other insurers accountable. Specifically, they're saying no more rate hikes until these Eaton Fire claims are covered.
And of course, that didn't happen. They got a rate hike. They got an emergency rate hike and then immediately filed for another rate hike. And Ricardo Lara still defiantly says that he is working for you to the detriment of his own career.
I may be criticized and dragged through the mud for it and get my wig snatched, as the gay guys say.
Now, an elected official was asked specifically about this. In fact, it was the top elected official in the state. Gavin Newsom was asked at this presser about this specific problem pertaining to California's ever-worsening insurance crisis. And I'm not hopeful for a good answer here, but let's hear what happened.
Governor Newsom, on the insurance question, you mentioned...
Let me boost them a little bit here, because, they never can properly mic the reporters. Don't know why they don't do that. Maybe they don't want you to hear the question.
Governor Newsom, on the insurance question, you mentioned it very briefly during your talk. There are a lot of people who are saying that they are not getting the payout that they believe they've earned by paying insurance over the years. This is a letter that a lot of people are sending to you from Altadena. They are asking, what can you do to help them get insurance payouts that they have not received yet?
So there you go. Gavin Newsom asked, what can you specifically do to make sure that these companies that make a ton of money in the state of California fulfill their end of the contract?
Yeah, so the insurance commissioner is tasked to focus and investigate some of the delays in claims.
Oh, okay. So we're passing the buck immediately.
And these concerns. And the insurance commissioner is doing precisely that. And he's got all the...
No, he's not.
He's got all the support from our administration and the legislature to advance that. That's the job of the insurance commissioner. Our job as well is to work together, the legislature, insurance commissioner, and this administration, to advance the principles that we laid out with our sustainable insurance strategy. We put out that plan through an executive order.
Yeah, 2 years ago. And it hasn't changed a damn thing. Except now we're going to make it even quicker for these companies to get their rate approvals.
Over a year and a half ago, we began the process of implementing that plan last year. In many ways, the stabilization, as unstable as it is, of the FAIR plan came out of the execution of the first phase of the implementation of the sustainable plan. As it relates to specifically the claims and how quickly they're being distributed, and as it relates to the type of concerns.
By the way, you know, it'd be a great answer from the governor. I'm going to get on the phone with the CEO of State Farm right now and yell at him. That would be a good response from the governor. But are we getting that? No. Do I need to go look up during the break how much money Gavin's gotten from State Farm?
As it relates to specifically the claims and how quickly they're being distributed, and as it relates to the type of concerns, as it relates to each policyholder, your insurance commissioner has our support as he investigates that.
Is that not passing the buck, Governor?
But it's the insurance commissioner.
Yes, it's definitely passing the buck. That's what he's done the entire time with this, because he knows how toxic this situation is for him, so he just tries to ignore it. Every single member of the legislature, and Gavin Newsom and all of the elected boards, they all want to make sure that the only person you blame for California's insurance crisis is Ricardo Lara.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Job, that's the agency's job. He has the support. That's not passing the buck. That's reinforcing a commitment. The executive order, the sustainable insurance plan, the work of the legislature, all of us supporting those efforts. Quite the contrary.
I feel like he didn't answer the question at all. He did get asked a follow-up and a few other questions that pertain to the recovery from this devastating incident that happened 6 months ago this week, the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire. We'll hear that response next, right here on the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. If you've ever missed an episode of the show, maybe you want to go back and hear some of the crazy calls that we get on this show, you've got to download the podcast. I'd appreciate it. Go to kabc.com/newsblitz or search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify. You can also do a Google on the YouTube because they're all right there. Now, have I got something exciting for you? And then we'll get back to Gavin Newsom, who's dancing around wanting to answer anything about the insurance crisis. 790 KABC welcomes A Beautiful Noise, the Neil Diamond musical. It's happening at the Hollywood Pantages Theater, July 8th through the 27th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show on July 15th. Tickets furnished by the Hollywood Pantages Theater. Good luck dialing. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC 1-800-222-5222. Your emails at randykabc@gmail.com. Give me a follow on social media at Randy Wang Radio and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. Before we get back to Gavin Newsom not wanting to answer any questions about, I don't know, victims of the Eaton fire not being able to get their claims paid out by State Farm or the Fair Plan, let's go to Bill in La Cañada. Bill, hello.
Hey, Randy, your guest host on July 4th had a revealing show on these topics. It is the News Blitz with your guest host, George, in for Randy on this 4th of July. Mr. Soto Martinez is here to defend Comrade Karen Bass and the city of Los Angeles. You go first, Hugo.
Hey, clap that up. Let's criminalize cholos. Let's criminalize crime. Let's criminalize insurrection.
Exactly, Hugo. Trump is using the white supremacy clause of the Constitution to justify mass incarceration of brown folks. Let's go to the phones. Imelda in Los Angeles. How does your community feel about this cold ice activity?
The down-ass kids don't like it.
Imelda, please do not use words like that on live radio. Let's go to Ricardo in Bogota, Colombia. Wow, what are you doing in Colombia, Ricardo?
I'm very kind of sketch. I'm the most hated person in California.
Oh, you must be our world-traveling LGBTQ insurance commissioner. Gracias por calling. Gavin is calling from South Carolina, New Mexico, and Iowa. Hola, Gavin.
Buenos nachos, George. Gracias for taking my call. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Let me turn down my private jet radio. Can you roger that, George?
Cut the crap already, Gavin. You're on the air.
I stand on my 2 feet connected to my 2 legs to support Mayor Bass in this existential invasion of our country by Trump.
You make a great point, Gavin. Call back anytime, buddy. If you're on hold, stay on hold for the lightning round. This is the News Blitz with George in for Randy on this July 4th holiday.
That's Bill in La Cañada and his one-man show. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Is that what I ran for the best of on that day? It was probably something about barbecue. Let's hear the reporters in the room not satisfied by Gavin Newsom's answer on insurance and the Fair Plan. Give a second go at it.
If I may piggyback off of that, I mean, when you walked in today, there was a group of homeowners who are unhappy with the response from their insurance carrier.
Yeah.
In addition to that, recently a court ruled in regards to smoke damage claims.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Fair Plan.
You can wait for him to finish asking his question. You don't need to go.
Claims.
Yeah.
Yep.
When it comes to the Fair Plan, what's the likelihood that that ruling may expand to carriers like, say, Allstate?
Well, I can't specifically relate to the details of the litigation and however that was adjudicated as it relates to the Fair Plan. But as it relates to that process and as it relates to that investigation.
This was the judge who said that the plans the Fair Plan was writing were illegal because they said they didn't cover smoke damage. And that's not minimal fire insurance.
But as it relates to that process and as it relates to that investigation, that work needs to be done. It needs to be aggressively advanced. And the process is unfolding in real time with the insurance commissioner. I wish the commissioner was here.
Why wasn't he? What was he busy doing?
Absolutely.
You know, this is only the biggest insurance problem the state is facing right now. You had every other elected, minus Karen Bass, because she didn't show up. Why wasn't Ricardo Lara at this? I don't know, you could defer to him, have him answer these questions.
He could talk about the status, and I would encourage you to inquire with the insurance commissioner the status of those investigations.
Yes, because he totally picks up the phone.
The state's oversight is limited even on the Fair Plan. Remember, it's not a state plan. It's not passing the buck. These are just facts.
That's the second time he said he's not passing the buck, which means he's passing the buck.
The Fair Plan is a syndicate pool, was established in 1967.
Fair Plan, fun fact, was established in the 60s in response to the Watts riots because companies did not want to insure businesses in that area anymore. And it has turned into a consortium of insurance companies that have found a way to write policies that are very high in premiums and very low in coverage.
And it's
for all the areas they don't want to cover.
And its component parts include the admitted markets.
Oh, yeah. Other fun fact. Before the fires broke out, Ricardo Lara made a rule change with the FAIR Plan that if the FAIR Plan goes broke, it used to be that the insurance companies would have to bail out the FAIR Plan. That's how it was supposed to work. Ricardo Lara changed a rule just weeks before the fires that the FAIR Plan, if it goes broke, the insurance companies will bail it out and then pass on that cost to you.
And contributions that are made. There is a board. We have a number of people we appoint that don't even have a vote on that board. And we obviously are monitoring part of the larger insurance reforms that we're advancing. The claims process with the FAIR Plan, not just the admitted market. But as it relates to State Farm and others, it's well known, well established. Investigations are ongoing by the insurance commissioner who announced that.
He's got no passion in his voice for the pain and suffering that so many victims are going through because they can't get their claims paid. They're getting dragged around, nonstop phone calls, 7 different adjusters. And he doesn't even care.
You can talk to him about the details of it. Final point. For those, and this is a critical point, for those that are underinsured, for those without insurance, that's why we're asking for the supplemental from the federal government. That's why we need more support from the feds to provide additional resources to address those gaps.
Yep, but what we're talking about is neighborhoods where people are insured. And they're not getting paid for the contracts that they made. That's a bigger issue than you needing the bailout from the feds that you're probably not going to get.
It's why we've gone out and raised tens of millions of dollars by local nonprofits to support their efforts, to support recovery across the spectrum. Those organizations I referenced, many, many others that are doing just that. It's exactly why I'm going to South Carolina to
It's not why he went to South Carolina. He is campaigning a little early for 2028, but, might as well be crass.
To substantively address those issues. Some people simply didn't have insurance for some of these claims, but they need the support. And the state is doing what it can to get support from the federal government beyond the $2.5 billion that I put up with the legislature's support so we can address the lack of access to need. And so that's all part and parcel of this broader effort.
Wonder why Gavin wouldn't even try to criticize State Farm or any of the other insurance companies that have these practices where they're not paying out fire victims. I got to look into that. Gavin Newsom was also asked about the report from 6 months ago that he said he would get as to why there were no water in the fire hydrants.
When we spoke in January, you talked about that you wanted to have an investigation into the water issues, water pressure issues, why the reservoir was empty.
August.
What have you seen in terms of
August.
investigation or any changes?
We have the investigation, the broader issue, after action report comes out next month. I don't know the exact date next month, but we anticipate. There's the face of the investigation there. Well, at least the launch of the investigation is independent review, and we'll have that information for you in August.
In August, we're finally going to find out why there was no water in the fire hydrants and why the reservoir was empty. Oh, boy. Let's just type into the old machine here and see if we can find out how much money Gavin has gotten from the insurance industry in his various elections. Well, in 2021, they weren't his top contributor, but they did give him about $123,000. That's fun. That year, his biggest campaign contributor was the TV and movie industry, probably so he could, get rid of the lockdowns and all of the policies for that. It's fun finding out the way people govern based on who gives them money, isn't it? Our system's great. When we come back, Gavin Newsom gets asked about the permitting process and how we can speed that up so, people can actually start to rebuild. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We know the permitting process in LA City and LA County has been very slow. Rick Caruso was all over the news yesterday talking about that very specific issue.
And I know in the Palisades alone in the city of Los Angeles, less than 100 building permits have been issued. You know, that just is a terrible metric that shows the lack of coordination, the lack of a plan that the city has. And the county, quite frankly, I don't think is doing much better.
Thanks, Rick. Gavin got asked about permits. Let's find out what he had to say.
Can you tell us about permits going forward? That's a huge issue that people are concerned
Well, that's exactly what we talked about today.
Yeah.
And I hope you'll pay particular attention to what Supervisor Barger had in her hands. And let me get to that. And what I presented in my slides, which laid out the areas, the pillars, as we referred to, of the 120-day next phase, moving from debris removal to recovery. That was aided and supported by independent consultants looking at best practices in recovery across the globe.
Okay, so far he hasn't said anything about permits.
And was done in partnership with the state to link arms with the county. That plan in detail will be out in just a week or so. And that is the plan to which we look to advance. Part of that plan.
It takes them 6 months to come up with a plan on how to speed up permitting. Well, this is California.
Part of that plan, and within a matter of days, will be the first phase pilot of this new AI technology.
You mean the one that Rick Caruso gave you months ago that you haven't implemented yet?
That we procured in partnership with philanthropy. A number of those groups I just mentioned, LA Rises, as it relates to Steadfast and others, we pooled together resources to procure an AI for plan checking, pre-approvals, and the first phase of that will be initiated within a week or so, and then be scaled to address some of those direct issues.
You know, because these processes could go and take a matter of days as opposed to a matter of months. But yeah, let's take our sweet time in implementing that.
The state's vision is realized at the local level.
Here we go. It's not my fault.
But localism's determinative as it relates. It's not passing the buck.
Boy, that's the third time he's said that.
Governor of California, not mayor of California.
No, I'm the top elected official, but nothing's my problem because I tell everyone what to do and they don't do it.
City.
This is the same thing he does with homelessness.
City, county, planning, review, inspections. State resourcing that and clearing any thickets, including CEQA. The EO that I referenced at the end of my presentation includes additional CEQA reform and Coastal Act reform beyond the 22 prior executive orders that I advanced.
Yes, but is it going to stop the Coastal Commission from, I don't know, blocking anyone from trying to rebuild what they had in the Palisades in Malibu? Yeah, I don't know about that one. When we come back, Gavin Newsom gets asked about the most likely cause of the Eaton fire, SoCal Edison. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Gavin Newsom gets asked about SoCal Edison possibly being responsible for yet another disastrous wildfire.
Lawsuits against them regarding that.
Yes, there are.
What can the state do to hold that power company accountable?
It can independently adjudicate the facts of what may or may not have occurred and not politicize that.
Let's not forget, this is the guy that bailed out PG&E after the Camp Fire.
And not politicize that process and that investigation. That's how we hold whoever is accountable. The independent review is independent of the specific investigation as it relates to the origin story of the Eaton fire. You've got investigations reviewing the origin story as it relates to the Palisades fire as well. The impact of both investigations will be outsized, and if the utility is liable, they ultimately will be held to account.
Except every single time that they've done this before, including most recently with the Woolsey fire, they get told by the California Public Utilities Commission that, yes, they will pay a hefty fine for destroying lives and livelihoods, but they can pass on that cost to you, the ratepayer.
That said, you should be mindful of this.
Don't tell everyone else to be mindful.
They will also likely, if that's the case, and I do not know, nor do you, nor does anyone, that is being independently reviewed. But the impact of that could be felt not just to one utility. It could impact utilities statewide, because the consequence and the liability exposure may be so large that it can impact the wildfire fund that we established after the bankruptcy of PG&E under SB 1057. We created a wildfire fund with the capacity to pay up to about $21 billion in claims. That wildfire fund would be stressed by that ultimate determination.
But of course, we don't want to do anything to make sure that, SoCal Edison doesn't have dead power lines out there that can be re-energized in a bad windstorm. Or I don't know, underground all the power lines to begin with. And Gavin's the one that signed the executive order because of rising energy costs that said, you know what? Maybe we pull back on undergrounding all the power lines.
And that's another reason that we have spent a great deal of time with our consultants and with legislative leaders to stress test that and the impact that would have on the entire independently owned utility market and access to capital and rates for all utility users in the state. So these are big, big questions.
Yeah, he knows that SoCal Edison's going to get sued to oblivion. Will he bail them out the way he bailed out PG&E? We'll find out. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KEBC.